I spent 2 years at Binghamton University, quickly forming a large group of friends. We'd usually go out every weekend, but one Friday night in October, when my group didn't have any big plans, 2 of my close friends and I decided to hang out at the school's nature preserve by the lake. There was this secluded clearing on the far side of the lake, perfect for having a fire, as it was far enough from the school or campus security. A few students, though not many, would occasionally use the spot to smoke, drink, and do other stuff they didn't want anyone to see. It wasn't a well-known spot on campus, which is exactly how we liked it. That night we brought a bunch of beers, lit a fire, and had what we called a bro chat. As the evening went on, time seemed to pass quickly, and the alcohol started kicking. And eventually we were laughing so hard that one of my friends was literally rolling around on the ground in the leaves. Then all of a sudden my other friend stopped laughing and said, "Shh." We all stopped and listened. In the distance we could hear leaves and branches crunching. Since we were underage, we quickly tossed our beer bottles into the lake, as it wasn't uncommon for campus police to patrol the woods on weekends to catch students doing things they shouldn't be doing. We stuffed the remaining beers into a backpack. I was pretty drunk, so my paranoia was on high alert. I assumed the same was true for the others. The fire we had going made it easier for anyone to see us in the woods, but this spot was so hidden and far from campus that it was rare for anyone to wander that far in. From the sound, it seemed like just one person was out there. The crunching of tree branches not far off made all of us tense up. None of us were particularly confrontational, so we didn't have the one person in the group who'd yell out to whoever was out there. Instead, we all sat in silence, shushing each other. Then it felt like someone or something was circling around us, walking in a circular pattern around our little campsite. It started to feel like something straight out of the Blair Witch Project. The sounds of cracking branches and leaves crunching kept echoing around us. At first, we laughed it off, but I personally started getting scared of who or what could be out there. Without warning, a huge thud made us all jump. At first, I didn't understand what had happened, but after a moment, I realized that a branch had been thrown right into the middle of our campsite. One of my friends immediately took off running, while my other friend and I just stared at each other, half laughing, half concerned. We weren't sure if this was some sort of prank or if something serious was happening. Then my friend let out a scream of pain. I turned to see that he had been struck in the face by another tree branch. I grabbed the backpack, helped him up, and we ran as fast as we could back toward the dorms. When we reached the road that separated the nature preserve from our dorm, we stopped to catch our breath. But whoever was out there had followed us, as we could hear footsteps getting closer. We kept running, not stopping until we were safely inside our dorm. When we made it to our floor, we found our other friend already, back in his room. We looked out of his room window down toward the woods. We could see someone pacing back and forth by the woods. Every time a car passed, the figure would disappear into the trees, then reappear once the car was gone. Eventually, they disappeared, for good, and we never saw them again. We tried to brush it off and resumed drinking in the dorm, laughing about the whole situation. It wasn't until the next morning that we all realized how truly terrifying the whole experience had been. After that night, we never ventured into the woods past dark again. It was my first year at university. I had just finished unpacking my things in my room and my family had just left. Later that same day, my roommate finally arrived, and from the moment we met, I could tell he was socially awkward, the most socially inept person I'd ever met. I introduced myself as Dan, offering my hand for a handshake. He paused, looked at my hand as if he didn't understand what to do, then awkwardly laughed and gave me a limp handshake. I had to ask him his name since he never told me when we shook hands. His name was Dale. I tried to make small talk, but he only answered with yes or no, occasionally awkwardly laughing or smiling. Within minutes, we were both sitting in our beds on our laptops, not talking to each other. I was upset and considered requesting a new roommate. Anyone would be better than Dale, I thought. I thought Dale was just a really awkward kid, but I soon realized he was much more than that. I met some of the other kids on my floor and they seemed cool, which was a relief. Later that night, I came back to the dorm after exploring the campus, only to find Dale in the exact same position he was in when I left. I said, "What's up, Dale?" but he didn't answer. Not that I was surprised. It was around 9:30 p.m. and I didn't have anything to do, so I turned off my lamp and went to bed. I didn't actually fall asleep right away, though. Dale stayed on his laptop until 3 a.m. when he finally closed it. I managed to fall asleep but woke up about an hour later. The blinds were open, and the moonlight was now creeping into the room, making everything visible, including Dale, sitting on the side of his bed, staring at me. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and said, "Dale, what the hell are you doing?" He whispered back, "Sorry," and laid down. The next morning, I woke up to find that Dale had already gotten up. It felt like it was the first time he'd left the room. It was Saturday, the first Saturday of the year, meaning orientation and all the campus festivities. As my group walked by the school gardens during orientation, I overheard a couple of students ahead of me saying, "What is that kid doing? In there?" I saw they were talking about Dale, who was sitting in the dirt behind a patch of bushes rubbing the bark of a tree with his hand. The orientation leader didn't notice him, but I just kept walking. Eventually, I told the two students I overheard that Dale was my roommate, hoping to start a conversation and maybe make some friends. They apologized to me, and we all awkwardly laughed. I made friends with those two kids, and we made plans to hang out later. I also found out when I got back to the dorm that the school had found a new roommate for me. Things were finally starting to turn around. Later that night, I went to meet my new friends, and when I came back, Dale was sitting in the desk chair facing the door. I said, "Oh, hey, what's up?" He replied, "Nothing," very matter-of-factly. I sat down on my bed and opened my laptop only to realize I hadn't locked it. I also noticed all my emails had been opened, emails I was sure I hadn't read, and a bunch of my folders had been opened. I asked him if he had gone through my laptop, and he immediately said no, very loudly, almost before I even finished asking. I could read him like a book. This creepy kid had been snooping through my computer while I was gone, but I didn't say anything. I went to bed, but when I started looking for my pajamas, I noticed my clothes had been moved around. I knew I'd be out of there the next day, so I didn't say anything. That night I woke up to the sound of a zipper. I sat up and saw Dale on the floor going through my bag. I turned on the lamp, confronting him about it. He played dumb, saying, "I think you have my toothbrush by mistake." It was the closest thing to a witty remark he'd made so far, but I knew he was lying, and I knew something was wrong with him. I couldn't physically confront him, though. The next day, I met my new roommate in the same building, and everything went well. That Sunday night, after having a decent conversation with my new roommate, who wasn't a social butterfly but much better than Dale, we both turned off our lights and went to bed. For the third night in a row, I woke up at some odd hour to a strange noise, a weird clicking sound. It wasn't constant, but I heard it at least twice every 30 seconds. I got up thinking it was something innocent, like a heavy bag putting pressure on a weak floorboard or maybe a mouse, but when I checked, I realized the sound was coming from the other side of the door. The nightlight in the common area was always on, so I looked through the peephole. I saw the scalp of a person standing outside the door, looking down so I couldn't see their face. The clicking noise was coming from the doorknob. They were trying to unlock the door. I dialed campus police, and they arrived in under 5 minutes. Only then did I feel it was safe to open the door. I found the officers with Dale in cuffs. I had a feeling it was him. I told them everything, that he was my former roommate, and had been going through my things. I switched dorms only to find him trying to break into my new dorm. They took him away. I don't know what happened to him after that, but I never saw him again. He either got suspended or expelled. I got through the rest of my years at university like everyone else, but the nightmare I had with Dale still pops up in my mind now and then. This took place during the first week of school, my freshman year at the University of Iowa. I was just starting to get comfortable with my roommate, who was eager to rush a fraternity. Rush week would begin the following week, but the parties were starting that Thursday during the first week. My roommate didn't want to go alone because he thought it would be harder to meet people that way, so he wanted me to join him. Even though I had no interest in rushing a fraternity, I was still excited about going to parties since I was attending a party school. I agreed to go with him. My roommate wanted to check out one frat party on Thursday. then visit different frat houses on Friday and Saturday. That Thursday night, we were headed to what was probably one of the lowest-ranked fraternities. Definitely a small underground one. His logic was that if the higher-tier houses didn't offer him a bid, this would be his backup. The frat house was a long way from campus, located in a rundown downtown area. We pulled up to a corner house, and if it weren't for the blasting music and cars parked everywhere, we would never have guessed it was a frat house. It looked like they'd settled on the first house they could find. We knocked on the door and were immediately greeted by a short, chubby guy in a white t-shirt, holding a solo cup. His shirt had sweat stains on the armpits and mid-belly area. He told us to come right in. Inside, the party was in a horribly dimly lit room, packed with probably 50 guys crowded together in the living room. It was so hot I could barely breathe. To make it worse, I think I saw maybe 2 girls at the entire party, and neither of them were attractive. I stayed for about 20 minutes, talking to one overweight foreigner after another, all of them giving off antisocial vibes. Eventually, I signaled to my roommate that we should leave, but there was a huge group of guys blocking the door, so we decided to stay a bit longer to avoid the awkwardness of leaving early. I kept drinking the cheap beers. They were serving, downing 5 cups before I even felt a buzz. Then a heavy guy approached me with a small bottle in his hand. He handed it to me smirking and said, "That'll get you shit-faced." I faked a laugh, thanked him, and expected him to walk away, but he just stood there watching me as if waiting for me to drink it. So I did. It was probably only 2 shots of some hard liquor. After I drank it, the guy started making conversation with me, and every time I tried to escape, he pulled me deeper into this one-sided conversation. Things began to get blurry. I suddenly felt incredibly dizzy, and the room seemed to darken. That's the last thing I remember before I woke up in a dark room lying on a bed. I could hear muffled music coming from behind closed doors, so I knew I was still in the frat house. The room was very dark, but I could still make out some furniture and a small closet door. The only other sound I could hear, even over the blaring music, was the crunching of a plastic bag from the closet as if someone had stepped on it by mistake. I immediately ran out of the room and down the stairs back into the crowded living room. I found my roommate and quickly pushed him out the front door, past a group of guys still standing in a circle right next to it. During the car ride back to campus, I told my roommate that I had been drugged. He almost called the cops, but I told him it would be pointless. Then he asked me a very awkward question. Was I taken advantage of? I didn't feel any pain, and my clothes were still on, so I assumed not. When I checked the time, I realized I'd only been out for about 10 minutes before waking up. Whatever the guy gave me must have been a dud or something. Thank God. That was my college experience at an underground ghetto frat party. It remains the scariest experience I've had in my life. I had a single dorm room during my first semester of sophomore year. It was located in the corner of the floor, sort of secluded from the other rooms. Since it was in its own little section, you had to turn a corner to even see the door. This setup was great because I could hang out with friends, invite people over, and still enjoy the privacy I needed to focus on homework or sleep. A few weeks into the semester, while I was studying for a biology exam, the silence was broken by a sound. It took me a moment to realize it was a faint tapping on the door. It was so quiet I almost didn't hear it at all. I yelled, "Come in!" But the door stayed shut, so I got up to open it, but there was nobody there. I walked down the hall to check, but there was no one. Somebody was clearly messing with me, so I returned to my bed and continued studying, this time leaving the door open. Nobody came back. The next night, just after I turned off the lamp and got into bed, the tapping returned. This time it was louder, more like knocking. I called out, "Who is it?" But the knocking stopped and no one answered. I quickly got up, opened the door, and found the small corridor outside my room empty. I ran the 10 feet to the corner and looked down the main hallway of the floor, still no one. The next morning I asked around to see if anyone had been playing pranks on me. Everyone said no. That night, just a few hours after I had fallen asleep, I was woken up by knocking. Again, this time louder than before. I hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to open the door, but finally, I summoned some courage and jumped out of bed to open it. As I expected, no one was there. This time I sprinted down the tiny hallway to where my room was located and turned the corner. There I saw the back of someone disappearing around the far corner at the end of the hallway. I ran as fast as I could down the hallway, and when I turned the corner where I had seen the person moments earlier, I saw a door at the end of the hall shutting. It wasn't a dorm room, it was a bathroom. My heart was racing, but I felt ready to confront whoever was messing with me. I pushed open the bathroom door with force. The light was off, so I turned it on, expecting to find someone hiding. But there was no one. My first instinct was to check the 2 bathroom stalls, both of which were closed. I got down on my hands and knees to look under them, and that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. 2 heavy black boots under one of the stall doors. I took a deep breath, pushed open the stall, and stared in confusion. The boots were there, but no person was standing in them. Then, I heard a strange, creepy giggle, not feminine or childlike, but the laugh of an old, crazy man. My confidence vanished in an instant, and I was absolutely terrified. I ran back to my room, slammed the door behind me, jumped into bed, and began texting all my friends, hoping for some comfort. Of course, they were all asleep. That night, the knocking came one last time. I ignored it as it went on for about 30 seconds before whoever it was finally gave up. The next day I talked to everyone on my floor. No one else had heard any knocking, and everyone swore they weren't pranking me. They all seemed sincere. I still don't know why this person targeted me or who they were. Based on the boots and the creepy laugh, I suspect it was an older man, and that still disturbs me to this day. That was another true story, but in the world of horror, truth is often stranger than fiction. If you're still watching, you're one of the brave ones. Most don't make it this far. Before you go, check behind you. Not everything that follows you makes a sound. Subscribe to Horror Stories and hit the bell because the next horror stories drop soon. And remember, the scariest stories are the ones that actually happened. Stay scared. Stay safe. We'll see you in the dark.